Hello and good morning. Welcome to your daily sit rep for Tuesday, the 28th of October, 2025. I'm your host, Mike Shelby. We have a lot to get through today. So, Robert, let's go ahead and jump inside the Beltway. Good morning to you. Let's start with a shutdown update. It looks like there's a union group that's encouraging Democrats to end the shutdown. And so far, Democrats are kind of saying, meh, what's the latest?
Good morning, Mike. Yeah, this is the American Federation of Government Employees, and they're urging Senate Democrats to vote for that clean temporary spending bill. A senior Republican aide said that they think this could be a pivot point for negotiations over the shutdown, but so far, like you said, the Democrat response has been basically indifference. But I think that is an indicator that we're likely to see the shutdown go past Saturday because all these points of pressure are building up that would normally or seemingly make Democrats cave on this, like the SNAP apocalypse that's coming on Saturday, the federal pay stops, and they're still not moving on this clean spending bill.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah, by the way, USDA came out and said yesterday morning that it's too late to fund SNAP, so there will be a lapse in SNAP funding. That's the EBT cards, so it will be hitting on Saturday, I guess Friday night at midnight, Saturday morning. And Robert, as I understand it, there are a handful of states that said they're planning to step in to offer some temporary funding, but it will not be a clean across the board, all 50 state thing. So we'll talk a little bit more about that here coming up. All right, let's move on down to the Caribbean because Senator Lindsey Graham is saying Trump is he's at least preparing to brief lawmakers in Congress on a possible escalation against Venezuela and Colombia.
That's correct. This was an interview over the weekend, and Senator Lindsey Graham said that when Trump returns from Asia this week, he's preparing a briefing for Congress on military operations against Venezuela and Colombia. And he said this briefing could cover an expansion of those military operations to move from the sea to the land to start including strikes on land targets.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then another government shutdown issue. The FAA is issuing ground stop warnings, and this is due to the shortage of air traffic controllers.
Yeah, this was on the FAA website as of this morning. They're issuing warnings about possible ground stops at multiple airports across the country. This includes Dallas Fort Worth, Houston's George Bush Intercontinental, Boston's Logan International Airport, the John Wayne Airport in Santa Ana, California, and then the Newark Liberty International Airport in New Jersey.
And then, all right, and then we do have some redistricting, a handful of redistricting issues. Go ahead.
Yeah, so in New York, there's a group of voters who are suing the New York State Board of Elections, and they're claiming that the 11th congressional district, which is currently a Republican seat, is illegally racially gerrymandered, and this violates the state constitution. I think they're making this case because of that pending Supreme Court decision on the Voting Rights Act. And this is also the only Republican seat in New York City and Long Island, which I think it's clearly the intent here is to flip it to the Democrats. And also, this is an end run around the New York Constitution's limit on mid-decade redistricting, which was a major hurdle for them actually trying to do a full redistricting of the whole state. And then Indiana's Governor Mike Braun called the legislature into a special session where they're going to consider a new mid-decade map, and that's scheduled to begin on the 3rd of November. And then yesterday, Virginia Democrats reconvened to start pushing a state constitutional amendment that will allow them to do their own map. Right now, they have 6 out of 11 of the House seats, and this is part of a larger push by the national level Democrats for redistricting. House Leader Hakeem Jeffries said the stakes are too high for Democrats to, quote, unilaterally disarm. And from what I understand, he's either yesterday or today in Illinois trying to push Illinois Democrats to do the same. Mm-hmm. And then I'm sorry. Yeah, that's it for the domestic sit rep today.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks for that, Robert. And let's go ahead and move on over to the global sit rep. Jared, good morning. Venezuela stopped shipping gas to Trinidad.
Yes, this is so they share fields for extracting gas and oil, and they're suspending the joint development plans for it. So Venezuela is probably going to assert dominance over the fields, and this is all due to Trinidad becoming what Venezuela called the aircraft carrier of the U.S. empire. And like I said, this is about shared gas and oil fields here, which you can see on the map. Over in the Philippines,
Just real quick, that Venezuela is doing this because Trinidad is allowing the United States to use their airfields.
it's because the U.S. just parked a ship in Port of Spain, which is Trinidad is centered here, so it's kind of right up in the armpit that you see on the left side there. So it's in you can see it from Venezuela, and that 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit that's been down in the Caribbean the entire time is now in Trinidad, training them on all kinds of mixed unit tactics, basic war preparations. Yes, yeah, it's because U.S. forces are in Trinidad.
Okay, and just a quick question. Let's say I don't think this is the base case, but let's just say this ends up happening. The Trump administration does pursue regime change, and we actually use military force to do this. Let's just say, for the sake of speculation, would we be using Trinidad at all other than like a naval stopover? I mean, will we be flying sorties out of Trinidadian airfields?
I don't think we would be doing anything for air dominance there. We might be securing oil fields from there, using all that is littoral operations, and then using the Marine Corps to actually establish footholds along the coast. Anything that we do for air dominance is going to be coming from that aircraft carrier that just got reassigned to the Caribbean. That's the purpose of that platform.
And that's coming over from the Eastern Mediterranean, and it'll be there this week sometime.
I looked at it yesterday. I think they're going to be there probably late this weekend. Just it's going to take a little while to get there. They had barely moved.
All right. Great update. Right. Let's go ahead and move on to the Philippines.
Over in the Philippines stood up their new strategic command. This is going to oversee additional allied operations, civil military functions. So as we've been seeing across Asia, and all of this points towards the Philippines Strategic Command mission serving the U.S. Strategic Command vision of a global team of allies and partners committed to maintaining strategic deterrence. It's all about integrating into that larger structure, and that's what the U.S. Strategic Command is, I think, going to use the Philippines Strategic Command for. Poland's Interior Ministry also announced that they're going to cut several regulations around civil protection and civil defense infrastructure, because basically all the laws are holding up their ability to actually implement them on a timely fashion. And all this, the ministry says, is a matter of external security, sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. So they are worried. They are planning for an invasion, frankly, if you're worried about territorial integrity. And then lastly, over in Israel, after declaring on Sunday that the state of Israel can determine who can send troops for Gaza's proposed international security force, Israel now claims that Turkey is not on the acceptable list. They're unacceptable. Netanyahu specifically referenced the accusation of genocide from Turkey, which basically leaves only the U.S. troops available for the security force because of how many people have signed on to that case.
Mm-hmm. All right, just one quick note on this Poland issue. What was it, over the summer, sometime May, June-ish, there were a couple of anonymous German and Polish intelligence officers who were cited in European media, and they both said they expected, and I'm just telling you what they said. They said that they expect Russia to eventually begin some sort of special military operation in the Suwalki Gap there, and which is nestled right in between Poland, Lithuania, and Kaliningrad. And so I imagine Poland is taking that very seriously. I think that's probably the root, of most of these preparations, just to remind everyone. All right, thanks for that, Jared. And we do have a question here. Briefly, Trev asks, is Venezuela about the cartels, or is it really about the Russians and the Chinese in the country? Well, I would say why not both? I will say this: you go back to December 2020, and the Army published that facility security report. And this is just the unclassified version, but in the unclassified version, they said specifically that, without naming China, that foreign actors would use transnational criminal organizations to conduct proxy warfare against the United States. So you look at this, and we look at all the drug boats and all the cartel armament that we see from Mexico down to Venezuela, other parts, just say broadly across the region. And, you start to put two and two together, and it's like, well, yeah, that's actually probably a significant concern if you are concerned that China could use these groups, pay these groups basically as mercenaries, maybe with some plausible deniability to conduct sabotage, to conduct who knows what. So I think this makes a lot of sense, and I'm not pushing for a regime change, obviously, but obviously something needs to be done against the cartels, and you've got to weaken these groups as well. And so I think that's what the Trump administration is trying to do here. And if it is the case that the Venezuelan president / dictator Maduro is making money, being personally enriched, maybe even funding some of his government operations by being involved in the drug trade and funneling drugs into the United States, fentanyl or not, it doesn't matter. If he's sending drugs to the United States, he's making money off of it, and he's enabling these cartels to potentially act as proxy groups. So you put all that stuff together, and it kind of makes sense to me. Jared, do you have anything to add to that?
No, that's exactly where I was going to go with that. Is yes to all of it.
Yeah. All right. Great question, Trev. All right, let's go ahead and move on. 69 protests today. That's about baseline. Coming up here over on the early warning, over on the high side, our early warning members only briefing. I'm going to talk about a few things that you can do as we look forward to this SNAP lapse. It's obviously going to happen on Saturday. USDA has already said they will not be funding it. There is going to be a lapse in funding. EBT cards will not be being reloaded unless a handful of states step up and say, yes, we're going to do this. Those states will not be reimbursed by USDA. USDA has already said if a state decides to unilaterally fund the SNAP payments, then they're going to do that on their own. I'll tell you about a few resources to help gauge your local risk. I was talking to one guy last night on the Special Projects conference call, and he did his area study, which everyone should be doing your area study, considering what's coming in this country and for that, what's already happened for that matter. And one of the things he was saying, he said his part of the county has one grocery store, and that's it. And it accepts EBT. And so everyone who's on SNAP benefits or EBT food stamps shops at that grocery store. And when the SNAP benefits get cut off, what's going to happen? So I think that was a really good data point for him to look at his area realistically and just say, there's one place they're going to get food, and they're not going to be getting food from there. Draw several other conclusions. At any rate, we'll go into some things. We'll also talk about DSA. There's a flashing red light here for Democratic Socialists of America. It's not sounding real good for their party. And then Robert will come on and run us through the rest of the Homeland Operations briefing. If you'd like access to that, head over to forwardobserver.com/trial. Stay up to date on the things that are going to be happening. We're just 4 days away from the SNAP shutdown now. All right, with that, everyone, thanks so much for watching the Daily Sit Rep. We are going to jump over to the high side and do our early warning members only briefing. Jared, if you would, please take us out. Early warning, folks, please stand by.